Merry Christmas from Daily Dose of Septuagint. We are back taking a look at Old Testament passages that are being used by Matthew in his birth narrative, and really excited to have again Patrick Schreiner. Welcome back, Patrick.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Good to be with you again, Greg.
Great. Well, let's get right into things. The third major passage that Matthew's birth narrative draws upon from the Old Testament is Micah 5, verses 1 and 3. But don't worry, we're also talking about verse 2 as well, because it sheds some interesting light not only on where Jesus is born, but who Micah foresees this figure to be. So very interesting stuff here. Let's dig in. Kesu Bethlehem oikos to Ephratha, olagastas tu, enai in kiliasen Judah, exu moi exelucitai to enai es archonta into Israel. And then we'll finish with verse 3 here in a moment. So we begin with the prophet addressing someone, Kaisu and you. This is known as an apostrophe. He's addressing the city or town of Bethlehem here. And it is the house of bread, but also the house of Ephratha. And as we'll see, that connection is made in Genesis, that there's a geographic tie between Bethlehem and the larger region of Ephrath. And then here's what he says. This is a second singular form of me, so second singular present indicative. You are. And he says, you are oligastos. This means few or least. So though you are fewest, if you will, then we have an articular infinitive. So you have the genitive to, that'd be the genitive neuter, plus an ani. This is now the present active infinitive of me. So though you are least to be, something like that. And then in kiliasen, so in or among the thousands is what kilios means, of Judah. So though you seem insignificant, in other words, here's the great promise. Ek su moi, so from you, that is from Bethlehem, to me, that is God here speaking through Micah. So on my behalf, he will come forth. This is from exelucitai or ex erchomai, third singular future middle indicative. Someone will come out from you. That is Bethlehem, for me, for my purposes. And once again, we have the articular to enai, to be, eis archonta. So I would translate this as actually. And then that's going to be accusative singular masculine of archon here. That means ruler. So someone is going to come from Bethlehem to be a ruler into Israel, in Israel. Now we're going to now jump ahead to verse 3. Here's what this ruler in Israel is going to do. Ke stasitai, ke opsitai, ke poimine, ta poimnion autu, in iskui kuriu. Notice we have three back-to-back verbs, all linked with kai. First one is stasitai. That's the third singular future middle indicative from histemi, so that's to stand or stand forth. And then he's going to see, that's from horao, also third singular future middle indicative. You see that stem change from horao to op, the sigma under the hood there. And he's going to poimine. This is from poimino, third singular future active in this case. And you see it drops an I, and then you have an epsilon contract because it is a liquid. So he will shepherd, ta poimnion. This is the flock, and it's his flock. So he will shepherd his flock in or by the strength of the Lord. And so let's now take a look at how Matthew 2, verse 6 connects to this and make a few comments about that as well.
All right, so the third fulfillment quotation comes in Matthew 2, 5 through 6. So we're in the same narrative, but what's happening is King Herod's wondering, hey, where is this king to be born? The Magi have come and told him, there's some Jewish king that's here. He's being born right now. We've read it in the stars.
It's like, wait a second, I'm the king.
He's like, no, this is not good. And so he asked the scribes, I think it's just the scribes, or the scribes and Pharisees. But he asked the scribes, and he says, go tell me where this king that is from your line, from your nation is going to be born. And what's interesting is it's put on these, on the lips of these scribes. So you see in verse 4, he assembled the chief priests, and it's the chief priests and the scribes, and he asked them where Christ would be born. And they said, and right correctly, in Bethlehem of Judea. And then they quote from Micah 5:2. Now, if you look, though, at the Greek text, we'll talk about some of the theology. Matthew, if he's using the LXX, at least the version that we have, again, we don't know his Vorlage for sure, but he makes a lot of little changes. Even I look at the beginning, in the LXX, it's oikos to Ephratha, and he just goes to the land of Judah.
Right.
And so, that refers to Ephratha is in Bethlehem. And so he just seems to simplify that. Maybe because there's a Bethlehem up north. It's kind of hard to know why. One of the changes that people struggle with is he goes from, you Bethlehem are so small,
Mhm.
alagostos, few in number, to by no means the
Right.
least.
Udamos,
But
yeah.
but that doesn't, it's a people have said it this way before. I'm probably copying someone, but it's a formal change, but it's not a material contradiction. He's saying you're a small little place, Bethlehem, but now because the Messiah has been born in you, you're by no means the least. Things have changed for you. In other
Yeah,
words,
a contextual update or something like
it's
that.
a,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a major change. And then there's other little changes from like clans of Judah to rulers of Judah. And then I'm looking at what other changes there are. But
Yeah. Some
the
stuff left
the
out. Yeah, it's a
yeah, there's
simplified
some stuff left
quotation for
out.
sure.
The biggest change is at the end. I think it's Micah 5:2, that says who's at the end of 5:2, who's coming forth is from of old or something from
Well, he just
ancient of
skips that
days.
part. Yeah, he
And
just
he
skips
just
that
skips
part. Yeah.
that part, and and he will shepherd my people Israel.
Right, which
And
is
you're
from
like,
verse one.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, well, wait, where did that come from? And so, there's two. I'm getting into the details, but this is what we do on Daily Dose of Septuagint, right? Maybe there's two theories of what's happening here. It either could be pulling from 2 Samuel 5:2, the promise to David that this new king will shepherd my people Israel, or alternatively, I think it's Micah 5:3. You can go down to Micah 5:3,
Hmm.
and it seems that if you're looking at the Septuagint, that he will shepherd his
Right.
flock. It also speaks there. So just two
Like
verses
yeah, it seems like
down.
he pulls a bit from three and
Yeah. And
skips
I
over
think
two.
actually that's significant. It'd be nice to have who's coming or Exodus is from Ancient of Days, like pre-existence. Here we
Right.
go. Like that'd be great to insert in here. But think about the context. Why would he talk about this ruler from Bethlehem shepherding his people Israel? What we're about to read is King Herod is then going to actually try to kill all the baby boys in Bethlehem. And I think there's a contrast here with he's saying Jesus is the true shepherd of Israel. What does a
Right.
shepherd do? He protects his flock. He feeds his flock. He doesn't attack his flock and try to destroy them. He actually, as David did, protects them from the lions and bears, etc. So there's a very clear contrast in terms of the kingship of Herod and the kingship of Jesus. And so Jesus will be the true shepherd of my people Israel. And I think those who are reading this should say, oh, yeah, Herod is not the true shepherd here. Matthew doesn't use the fulfillment formula here, which is interesting.
Right.
But I think this is just a straightforward prediction fulfillment text. So, a few days ago, we talked about how, there's maybe a double fulfillment. This seems to be just that cannon shot, like,
Right.
a ruler is coming and it's fulfilled in Jesus Christ. The Messiah will be born in Bethlehem, and now it's happened. And maybe the other thing I'd say, and then we can bounce around some different ideas here, but if you look at Matthew 2, many of the fulfillment quotations do have to do with locations. So it begins here with Bethlehem, the city of David, where the Messiah will be born. Then we have it's Egypt, then it's Ramah, and then it's Nazareth. And so you
Right.
just notice there's four geographical locations. I always say Matthew 2 is about where is the Messiah from? And Matthew's like, well, he's kind of from all these places, but it all fits with the scriptures, the Old Testament scriptures. So
Yeah.
therefore, he is the Jewish Messiah.
Interesting. Yeah. So it does seem like if you just kind of outline the Matthew 2:6 text, that he is going, okay, Micah 5:1 in the Septuagint numbering, skip the bit that you mentioned, which he's come back to, and then he's just lifting the he will shepherd, because that's in the text as well.
Mm-hmm.
Exact same
Mm-hmm.
morphology.
Mm-hmm.
And if you buy the thesis of folks like Richard Hayes and others that, and I think this is true even in our own parlance, if you say 4 and 7 years ago, if that's all I say, that automatically brings certain association.
Yeah.
So it's almost by skipping that middle bit that can sometimes make it louder, especially for those who have ears to hear and who know the Bible. So if that's true, is this fundamentally actually about the geography? I mean, it is in one sense. Yes, it's in Bethlehem. But if you look at Micah, it's not just about the place. It's about the nature of the person whose exit, his exodus is of Ancient of Days. You mentioned pre-existence. I'd love to hear more about that. Or he's going to be this shepherd. And in fact, if you look at Micah 5:2, he basically says, and I'll put the Greek on the screen here, The one who is about to give birth, she will give birth at a certain time, and then the brothers who have been sent away will be brought back. So there's a return from exile kind of thing. So I don't know, thoughts about that. Is that actually part of the reason why Matthew is going to include this, that it's not simply, okay, check the box, he was born in Bethlehem, but it's
Right.
who's born in Bethlehem that becomes quite significant. I don't know, thoughts about that?
I think that's right. I think there's multiple things going on with this quotation. You can't just say one. I do think if you look at the big structure of Matthew, locations are important. So I wouldn't want to deny that. I mean, Matthew 2:1 says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem. And I think it's Luke who says in Bethlehem, the city of David. Right. He even adds like, I just want to let you know this is the city of David. So this is important. Mm-hmm. And then the question is, where will he be born? And so it leads you towards the geography. I would say Bethlehem is important. But as you get towards the end, where he says, you will shepherd my people Israel, there you're adding, it's not just where he's born, but who he is and how he acts as king. Mm-hmm. Matthew is going to emphasize Jesus is the Jewish Messiah, the Jewish king, but he's the Jewish king in a way that he acts differently both than the kings of the earth and the previous kings of Israel who did not shepherd their people. And so he's already setting up what type of king is this? And Matthew's going to use the shepherding imagery again and again. I think it's in Matthew 10. He uses that, Matthew 9 and 10, end of 9 and beginning of 10, that he uses that imagery again. And so we have throughout the gospel that it's not just where, it's not just like again, we don't want to think of this just as just a proof text. He's actually giving you information on who this king is and how he'll act. So I would just say it's probably both and there.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. Do you think it's a little whisper of pre-existence?
Yeah, I haven't gone down that path. I've just thought from Ancient of Days. I'd have to go back in the LXX and think in the Hebrew Bible, like what do you mean when you say that? But It's hard not when the connection is to Jesus to think like, he's born in Bethlehem, but he comes from Ancient of Days. So, as the Chalcedonian definition says, there's two begettings. There's the eternal generation and the begetting in terms of Mary and is coming to the earth. And so even is it Simon Gathercole who wrote a work on I have come language plus
pre-existence,
and it's like I have come from the heavens. I mean, this is strongly emphasized in John. So it's kind of like I'd love to track that down more. I don't know if you've done that work. Even his Exodus is from the beginning. I don't know. I would just say it's curious to me without having spent the time to really track it down and have a firm conclusion on it.
Yeah, I mean, even some Septuagint scholars have argued that, irrespective of Matthew's use here, that there's a whole realm of scholarship on the Greek Old Testament about, okay, to what degree is there theological amplification or a messianization in certain cases? And so there has been some work on this particular verse as to, relative to the putative Hebrew, is there an amping up of the pre-existence kind of nuance here, which would fit with the time period, because you start to see ideas of pre-existence enter the chat with First Enoch and some other writings. So
that's right.
I think there could be something to it, even in the Greek of Micah.
Yeah, and there's been more books coming out of kind of high Christology within the Hebrew text itself, which has been helpful. This is not just a New Testament innovation. Rather, you can see it in the Hebrew Bible itself, and so that would be another text that'd be helpful to kind of look at in more detail.
Interesting. Well, good stuff. Thanks a lot. Micah 5 is in the books. Thanks a lot.